What would you do if the person you loved disappeared just hours before your wedding? Would you think they ran away? Would you believe they betrayed you? Or would you search for the truth, even if that truth could destroy your entire life? This is the story of Emma and Daniel. They had been together for 4 years. They had planned their wedding for almost a year. The flowers were ready. The guests had arrived. The wedding dress was hanging inside the bedroom. And the rings were waiting on the table. But just 3 hours before the wedding, Emma disappeared, and the only clue she left behind was a short letter. A letter that said, "Daniel, I am sorry. You must never marry me." But why? What had Emma discovered? And what secret was Daniel hiding? It was a beautiful Saturday morning. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and the small town was preparing for the biggest wedding of the year. Emma stood in front of the mirror wearing her wedding dress. She looked happy. At least, she looked happy from the outside. Her mother entered the room and smiled. "Emma, you look beautiful." Emma turned around, but instead of smiling, she looked worried. Her mother immediately noticed. "What happened, sweetheart?" Emma looked at her for a moment. Then she whispered, "Mom, do you think people can hide their true identity from the person they love?" Her mother laughed softly. "Everyone has secrets, Emma. But why are you asking?" Emma looked down at her wedding ring. "I had a strange dream last night." "What kind of dream?" "I was standing at the altar with Daniel." She paused, and suddenly, I saw a different man standing beside me. Her mother smiled. "It was just a dream." Emma tried to smile. "Yes, maybe." But deep inside, she felt something was wrong. For the past few weeks, Daniel had been acting strangely. He would leave the room whenever his phone rang. He had started receiving mysterious messages. And every time Emma asked him about them, he became angry. But Emma still loved him. She believed every relationship had problems. And today was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. She had no idea that before sunset, her entire life would change. At 10:17 in the morning, Emma received a message from an unknown number. The message contained only one sentence. "Ask Daniel what happened on June 14, 2019. Emma stared at the screen. She had no idea what that date meant. She tried calling the number, but it was switched off. A few minutes later, she walked downstairs. Daniel was standing in the living room, talking to one of his friends. When he saw Emma, his face suddenly changed. "Emma, why are you here?" She looked at him. "What happened on June 14, 2019? The room became silent. Daniel's friend looked at him. Daniel slowly turned toward Emma. "Where did you hear that? Answer me." Daniel looked nervous. "It was nothing." "Then why are you acting like this?" "It was years ago, Emma. It has nothing to do with us." Emma stepped closer. "Then tell me what happened." Daniel's face became pale. He looked at her and said, "Don't ask questions about things you don't understand." That answer frightened Emma. She had never seen Daniel like this before. "What are you hiding from me?" Daniel did not answer. Instead, he walked out of the house. Emma stood there alone. For the first time in 4 years, she began to wonder if she truly knew the man she was about to marry. Emma went upstairs. She needed answers. She opened Daniel's old drawer. Inside were some photographs, documents, and an old black box. She had never seen the box before. Her hands were shaking as she opened it. Inside was a photograph. The photograph showed Daniel standing beside a young woman. Emma looked closely. The woman looked strangely familiar. On the back of the photograph was written, June 14, 2019. Emma's heart began beating faster. Under the photograph was an old newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Young woman disappears without a trace." Emma read the article. The woman's name was Sarah Miller. She had disappeared on June 14, 2019. She was 22 years old. And the last person seen with her was a young man named Daniel Carter. Emma dropped the newspaper. No, she began searching through the box. Then she found something else. A small silver necklace. The same necklace Sarah was wearing in the photograph. Emma could barely breathe. At that moment she heard footsteps outside the room. She quickly hid the photograph. The door opened. Daniel was standing there. He looked at Emma. Then he looked at the open drawer. His face turned cold. "What are you doing?" Emma stepped backward. "Who is Sarah?" Daniel said nothing. "Who is she?" Still no answer. Emma held up the photograph. Why were you the last person seen with her? Daniel's eyes filled with fear. But before he could say anything, someone knocked on the front door. Daniel quickly left the room. Emma followed him quietly. A tall unknown man was standing outside. He looked directly at Daniel. Then he said, "You still have not told her the truth." Daniel froze. Emma stood behind him. "What truth?" The stranger looked at Emma. "Your fiancé has been lying to you for 4 years." Daniel shouted, "Leave." But the stranger did not move. He looked at Emma and said, "Sarah Miller was my sister." Emma's face went pale. What happened to her? The stranger looked at Daniel. "Ask him." Emma turned toward Daniel. "Tell me the truth." Daniel finally spoke. "I did not hurt Sarah." "Then what happened?" "She was alive when I last saw her." "Then where is she?" Daniel looked down. "I do not know." Emma shook her head. "You expect me to believe that?" The stranger stepped forward. "Daniel was the last person with my sister. He told the police she left alone. But I know that is not true." Emma looked at Daniel. "Why did you lie?" Daniel's eyes became wet. "Because I was scared." "Scared of what?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Sarah did not disappear because of me." He paused. "She disappeared because of my father." Emma stared at him. "What?" Daniel finally revealed the secret. His father had been involved in illegal business. Sarah had accidentally discovered something. She had found documents proving that Daniel's father was stealing money from the company. When Sarah threatened to expose him, she disappeared. Daniel had discovered the truth years later. But he was too afraid to speak. Emma looked at him in disbelief. "You knew." "I knew something happened, but I did not know where she was." The stranger shouted, "You knew enough to tell the police." Daniel lowered his head. "I was 22 years old. I was terrified." Emma looked at the wedding decorations. Then she looked at Daniel. "How could you plan to marry me while hiding this?" Daniel whispered, "Because I wanted to forget the past." But the past had finally returned. Emma walked back upstairs. She was confused. She was angry. And she no longer knew whom to trust. Then she saw something on the bed. A white envelope. Her name was written on it. Emma. She opened it. Inside was a letter. The handwriting was old. The letter began, "If you are reading this, then Daniel has finally decided to marry you." Emma stopped breathing. The letter was from Sarah. She continued reading. "Daniel is not the person you think he is. But he is not a murderer either." Emma's hands began shaking. Sarah explained everything. Years ago she had discovered Daniel's father's crimes. She had planned to go to the police. But Daniel's father found out. He threatened her. Sarah escaped and went into hiding. She had never been kidnapped. She had left the town by herself. But before leaving she had given Daniel evidence. Daniel had promised to help her. But he was too afraid. Sarah wrote, "I disappeared because I wanted to survive." Then came the final line. But Daniel knew the truth. And he chose silence. Emma closed her eyes. Now she understood. Daniel had not killed Sarah. But he had hidden the truth. And sometimes, a lie can destroy a relationship just as completely as a crime. Emma returned downstairs. Daniel was standing alone. The wedding guests were waiting. The music had already started. Daniel looked at her. "Emma." She removed the wedding ring. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "I love you." Emma looked at him. "I know. Then do not leave me." Emma shook her head. "Love is not enough when there is no trust." Daniel remained silent. Emma handed him the ring. "Maybe you did not hurt Sarah." She paused. "But you lied to me for 4 years." Then she walked away. The wedding was cancelled. The guests slowly left, and Daniel stood alone inside the empty hall. 3 months later Emma received another letter. It was from Sarah. She was alive. She had been living in another country for years. She had watched from a distance as Daniel continued living his life. But she had decided it was finally time to reveal the truth. Emma never married Daniel, and Daniel eventually went to the police and told them everything he knew about his father's crimes. The truth had arrived late, but it had finally arrived, and Emma learned a lesson she would never forget. Sometimes the biggest danger is not the person who tells you a lie. Sometimes, it is the person who hides the truth while telling you, "I love you," and that is the hidden truth of this story. The end.